about the turnout. It's awesome. Thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. So, let's start out with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I hope that everyone had an easy time getting here tonight. I had to leave about 30 seconds earlier to get through all that traffic from all the jobs created. It was heavy. and I got behind one of those cars that goes real slow, you know. And I'm pulling up behind it. It's a brand new car. And there's smoke coming out of the side windows. And I get up close, it's one of them smoking hot new Chevy Volts. And then I pull around, and it's being towed by a Toyota Prius. And I think Howard Ashmore was driving the Prius, and he was just having a good old time. Huh, Howard? I've got my notes here. Sarah Palin, she borrowed them from me. Because actually what happened was when I was a junior in high school, I took my exam for French, my French class. I put it on my hand, and the teacher was a little smarter than I thought. She had a mirror up in the end of the... And so I'm taking my test, and she comes walking over, and she said, "Mr. Christensen." And when you're 16 or 17 and you're called Mr. Christensen, you know you're in trouble. And so she said, "Can I see your hand?" And I showed this one. She said, "No, the other one." So I showed her my hand, and she says, "Do you want to go to the principal's office with a note, or do you want to tell him yourself?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell him myself." So I go to the principal's office, and of course, in the principal's office was my mother. She worked at the high school at that time. And that's who I was afraid of more so than the principal itself. So anyway, this is an old trick. I just wanted to tell you one simple little thing that happened that has kind of set in with me. A couple weeks ago, a good friend of mine who owns one of the largest military arms manufacturing companies in the U.S., he's in Nevada, he called me up and asked me if I'd like to check out his operation. So my wife Angela and I, we went up there and we checked it out. And when we were all done at the end of the day and we came out, and his bumper sticker on his car pretty much said it all. And it said, "Two people have paid the ultimate price for you. Jesus died for your soul, and a soldier died for your freedom." And I thought about that, and that really sums it up. And I thought, here we are tonight, exercising these rights because of those who sacrificed so much for us to be here to be able to do that. And this flag on the wall right here was my dad's. He served over 3 years during World War II in the Pacific, lost a lot of friends, and I thought I could honor him tonight by flying his flag. So I would like to know how many veterans are here tonight. If you're a veteran, could you please stand up? It's because of you that we have these rights today. And I think that for us to go home every night from our job, if you're lucky enough to have one, and have a warm meal and watch TV and go sleep in a nice warm bed. The sacrifices that others have paid for us, I think to be here and participate in these functions like this is the least we can do. So I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and participating in this. So thank you. I'd like you to know that Congressman Garamendi was contacted by me personally, and he had declined the offer to show. That he was busy, so I made a secondary date possible, and he was busy on that date as well. So I called him first to kind of plan it around that because he is a congressman, and so anyway, he was invited. The basic format for tonight, the way we came up with the format was our board and myself, I had contacted a lot of our members, and I asked them how they would like this to be carried out, and it was overwhelming that they all wanted information from the candidates as to what they stand for. They didn't want to watch the dog fights that we're seeing on the national scene. So the way we set this up was it's for information from the candidates as to their positions. So I have to say that for 6 candidates to show up tonight, that's commendable, and I just want to thank all of them for being here. In today's atmosphere, to even run for office is, you know, we have to really respect that. So I want to thank the candidates for being here tonight. Now, as far as the questions go, we put that out to our members, and we picked those questions that were repeated the most by the members. And of course, we couldn't include all of them because we'd be here all night if we did that. So the questions were chosen by members of other Tea Party groups and our members as well. And all the questions, they follow the principles of the Tea Party, which is fiscal responsibility, constitutionally limited government, and free markets. That's what our questions are based on. That's what we stand for, and that's what we're going to do. So, now, one of the things we changed just a little bit was, instead of individuals getting to ask questions, I asked the candidates if they could set up tables, which they all have. So after this is over, they will stay here so that any questions that you may have of any candidate, you can get a one-on-one and you can actually go talk to them. We thought that would work out a little better. That way you can address your questions exactly to who you would like to speak to. So, okay, I wasn't sure, as much as we heavily advertised this, exactly who would be showing up. And the last thing we wanted was someone to be here that was going to disrupt the proceedings. So I called Marysville PD, and I just to let them know, inform them that this was going on, and just in case we needed their help, because the last thing I thought we would need was the front page, you know, of the Yuba Tea Party Patriots and the Solano Tea Party Patriots doing tag team, you know, on somebody. So they said we would be more than happy to get 2 reserves to be there just in case. He said they can be outside or they can be inside, and I said there's no reason, you know, they're voters as well. And there's a lot of information here that they would like to hear themselves, and there's no reason that they couldn't be in here to listen to this. So, just a little warning, if there is anybody that's here, thank you guys. So just a pre-warning, if anyone is here to cause problems, you'll be asked to leave, and you will leave. So, anyway, our moderator is this handsome young guy over here, Kevin Christensen. He happens to have the same name as me. So I'm going to let Kevin take it.
A short introduction by each of the members. Minute and a half introduction by each of the contestants, and then a little nervous. It's been a while. After that, I'm going to start straight into the questions. if you could please hold your applause until the intermission, which will be about halfway through, and at the end, that'd be awesome, so we can keep going through. And each question that I ask, the candidate will get about a minute and a half to answer, and we will have a timer, so we're going to try and get through these nice and quick. Anybody have any questions before we get started?
The speaker's out.
Oh. So did only half of you hear me go through that?
Okay, just real quick while we're getting it all set up, I can talk loud too. So, each candidate's going to have about a minute and a half to introduce themselves.
I can hear you.
Can we all hear me? That's good we get this over with before, we're in the middle of it, so that's good. So everyone's going to get about a minute to introduce themselves, let us know who they are. Each candidate will then have about a minute and a half to answer every question that I ask. About halfway through, we're going to take a 5 or 10 minute intermission, let everybody stretch their legs, and the candidates get a drink of water, and then we'll keep on plugging right along through. So, also, Mr. Paul Myers here has volunteered to be our timer.
You see that red one?
That's the red one. Where's the hook?
All right, so candidates, if you guys would like to go ahead and step up to your respective podiums, that'd be awesome. And then we're just going to start from... Thank you. We're going to start stage right and just go ahead and proceed down the line, which means, audience, we're going to start on the left with Mr. Shaw.
Does that do sound too? Yeah.
How much time from when I see the yellow to when I'm going to see the red? About 5 seconds? 10 seconds. 10 seconds, okay.
And I will start my time when it finishes the question.
Okay.
That way you got
Good to go. Shall I go ahead? Whenever you're ready. Hey, hello, everybody. I'm Charlie Shout. I hail from the town of Esparto. It's a small farming community down in Yolo County. We've lived in the district since the 1880s. We're farmers. We farm about 3,000 acres. I went to Yuba College over here. I lived in Warren Hall back in the 1970s. I went up on the Chico State. I got 2 degrees in agriculture. And I was also students for Reagan in 1976 and again in 1980 when my president got elected. I decided to serve my country, the United States Marine Corps. But I'm more than just a Marine. I'm now retired from the Marine Corps as a Lieutenant Colonel. I'm also a former school board member, former chairman of the Yolo County Republican Party, former director of the Yolo County Taxpayers Association, and I've been in the trenches for a long time fighting for what I think you believe in, and that's honest, responsible government from both sides of the aisle. I don't like the hot, long-winded politicians telling you what they want to hear or what you want to hear rather than what you need to know. As I say, a leader will tell you the truth, but a politician will tell you what you want to hear. Folks, I will always tell you the truth. My name is Charlie Shop, and I need your help in this election. How long did I go? Good. That's what I claim.
About Christmas, I stopped at the cleaners. So I was going around the back of my truck. Another gentleman in a truck pulled up behind me. The elderly fellow got out. He looked at the back of my truck, and the window says, "Eugene Ray for Congress." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, after the first year, I'll announce that I'm running for Congress." He said, "What party?" I said, "Republican." He goes, "Why would you do that?" I said, "Well, because my beliefs tend to lean that side. Smaller government, lower taxes, more freedom, more opportunity for the citizen." Then he said, the gap between the highest wage earners and the lowest wage earners in America is the biggest it's ever been. And I said, America didn't become the greatest nation in the history of the world by penalizing success. It became the greatest nation by creating opportunities for the middle and the lower class to move up if they wanted to work for it. He thought about it for a second. He goes, "You got a card?" I said, "Yeah." He looked at it and goes, "I didn't really care for that Garamendi much anyhow." My name is Gene Ray. I'm from Vacaville. I've been in real estate down there for about 35 years. I'm an 8th degree black belt. I was a world karate champion. When I saw drugs and gangs coming into our area, I started a program out of the church where I go into the at-risk areas and offer the kids free lessons if they stay out of trouble, stay out of fights, keep their grades up. New grades were going to be an issue, so I brought in people from the private sector to tutor them. And I watched kids go from D's and F's to A's and B's in 30 days. And for the Latin families, I brought in somebody to teach English classes so they keep better track of their kids and they could get better jobs. Thank you very much for inviting me.
yield any of my time to him, just so we're clear. First off, I want to apologize for my voice. I am fighting that horrible bug that's going around, so I will talk as loud as I possibly can. First off, I want to say to all of you, congratulations to you Tea Party members. The reason why we are having the discussions we are having today and the debates we are having at the state level and at the national level is because of you folks. You have brought the issues forward that are the most important to our party and to our future, so I congratulate you all on your steadfast commitment to your issues. The reason why I'm running for Congress. Not long ago, I sat across the table from a gentleman who was having his property stripped away from him by a group of regulators. I had the ability and the policy knowledge to step in and stop that from happening. This man worked 3 jobs to buy this piece of property that was his retirement for his family and his college fund for his kids. And these regulators were overreaching in their authority and taking what was rightfully his. By the time I was finished, he was able to use 99% of his property and do what he was rightfully and legally allowed to do. I knew that moment I could make a difference, and we need to stop overregulation such as this, not only in this state, but in this country. My name is Kim Van, and I'm your next congressman.
Hi, how's it going? I'm kind of tall, so I said I didn't want to make a whole bunch of noise. My name is Tim Core, and I'm running for Congress, much as everybody else here. And I'd like to start by thanking the Tea Party for having us here tonight. It's the first debate of what I'm sure will be many, and the turnout here is absolutely amazing. We've done a couple of these events so far, and I've got to meet a couple of the people on stage before, and I can honestly say that I know I'm in good company up here, as well as when I was walking around amongst y'all. Now, the reason why I'm running is I'm sure everyone has heard the, if you don't vote, you can't complain. Well, I've always voted. I've never missed one. Ever since I was old enough to vote. Even before that, when it was, student body type stuff. And I always figured at one point, my list of grievances would get shorter. Never does. It always gets longer. So I figured the only way that I could reconcile it with myself is to get into it and try and make a difference. Thank you.
My name is Tony Carlos. I'm a prosecutor at the Sutter County District Attorney's Office, and I'm born and raised here in Marysville, Yuba City. In fact, I grew up right over there on East 19th Street, not too far from me. I'm running for Congress because it's time, I believe it's time for regular people, average, everyday people to participate in the political process, whether it's through coming to events like this or running themselves. I think there's most of us up here, some of us have run before, and some of us haven't, but I think it's important that average people get out and run for office. And I think being here, it's kind of preaching to the choir. It's a Tea Party event. We know what it is we need as a nation. We know we need less federal government, less federal encroachment on our liberties in our everyday lives. We need more individual liberty, and we need free market principles to be allowed so that the private sector can be allowed to flourish and production can increase. And that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Rick Tubbs and I am running to be your congressman. And thank you so much, Yuba Sutter Tea Party, for putting this on. It's a great event. I'm looking forward to answering your questions tonight. Now I noticed they put me on the far right, which is just fine by me. But let me tell you why I'm running for Congress. I have lived the American dream. I have the microphone group in here, so I think I get 10 extra seconds. Anyways, I have lived the American dream. I was a kid that grew up on welfare, one stop sign town back in Wisconsin. Earned a military scholarship to go to college. Became a pilot in the United States Air Force. And then lived that dream for several years before my wife and I started a small business. And now I fly for a major airline and fly for the Air Force right out of Vacaville. I fly out of San Francisco. I've got 3 kids, 3 wonderful kids back there, and I'm running for Congress with a great hope to be your congressman. That to me is the American dream. I was able to live that because of our United States Constitution that set the foundation for protecting our rights and giving us the freedoms that make this country the best country this Earth has ever seen. And the reason I'm running is to fight to make sure that great American dream is still there for our kids for the future. Thank you.
All right. Let's go ahead and get started with questions. First question.
Kevin, question.
Yes, sir.
You're not going to ask about any ex-wives, are you?
Strictly issues. Remember, three core principles of the
Are you going to start with me every time, or are you going to mix up?
It's going to rotate quite a bit. So hope you guys can bear with me. We're going to start with Miss Van.
I have no ex-wives in the audience.
With the U.S. over $15 trillion in debt, borrowing about 40 cents of every dollar we spend, what do you think we should do regarding farm subsidies that account for billions of dollars every year in the federal budget?
Well, actually, we're over $16 trillion in debt, and it's over 43 cents for every dollar that we are financing to get that wonderful debt up every single day. We have to cut everything back. The new farm bill that they're proposing does not have the same type of price supports that farmers look legally allowed to receive today, and it does not have them. Price supports were put into place to make sure we had a safe, reliable domestic food supply. Food is just as important as oil, water, and natural gas. We need not be dependent on foreign countries for our food, for our water. We need to be resourceful with our natural gas and our oil so that we can be an energy, food, and water-rich country.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tubbs, what major steps do you personally think we should do to help get our debt under control as far as what Congress can do?
Okay, saving the world in a minute and a half. We have to balance our budget. That has got to be the number one priority of those 535 individuals that are in Congress right now for the future. We can do that. It is possible. I am in charge of a nearly $20 million budget right now for the military. We set priorities, we draw a line, we stretch our bucks as far as we can make them go, and we balance it every year that I've been in command, and the other commanders do as well. It is possible, but it takes the fortitude to make the tough decisions, to be the leader on these issues, to take the risks, to say what needs to be cut, what needs to be made more efficient, what needs to be improved. You got to have leadership that's willing to take those risks, make that stand, and articulate the defense for it. We have to balance this budget. Under a plan I have, it can be done in 5 years under reasonable cuts, reasonable growth that is going to cost all of us something. It is going to be a national movement. You're going to wear a badge of honor of what you gave up to ensure the future for our children and grandchildren under the proposal I'm going to give as your congressman. So you've heard the Paul Ryan budget, good start. There will be a Rick Tubbs budget that balances the federal budget in the future and saves the American dream, back to my key idea tonight. So thank you.
Mr. Core, how do you think Congress can best help to get the economy back on track?
Well, the first thing that they need to do, I think, is take a pay cut. As a way to show everyone that they're in it too. Congress has moved from what it was originally designed to be. And now we have a lot of people there who think that they're there to rule the people and not to serve the people, and they need to be reminded of that. There are Congress people in office right now that say that their $174,000 a year salary and their ancillary benefit package that goes with that is not enough, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. As someone who lives paycheck to paycheck, I can tell you that's insulting. It's really annoying. So everyone in Congress needs to lead by example. And one of the things that they can do is tell all the government agencies out there, hey, guess what? No more advertising budget. I was driving up from Fresno on the 99, and the Federal Department of Transportation had a billboard 10 miles away from any town. Why? How much do they spend on that billboard? How many billboards are like that? Why are we financing advertising? Everyone knows there's a Federal Department of Transportation, and they don't do much to help the states. All they do is make life worse. Right now, the Federal Department of Transportation wants to make it so that anyone under the age of 18 is not even allowed to touch farm equipment, whether it's motorized or not. They need to stop overreaching, and we need to go after all of the agencies to make sure that they pare down everything, and I'm out of time. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Shop?
You can say shop or shout, either or.
Okay.
Charlie works too.
I'll go with Charlie. So, what major steps do you think we should do to help get our debt under control?
Okay, folks, this is real simple. I believe in limited government. Where our founding fathers never saw this massive bureaucracy that we now have in Washington, D.C. The best government, the most reliable, the most cost-effective government is local government. We need to strip the size of the federal government down, way down, get rid of a lot of those departments, return control to the states, return control to the counties, return control to the local cities, return control to the local school boards. That's how we pay the bills. Balancing a budget and keeping that huge bureaucracy in Washington does nothing. We need to return control to you, the local taxpayers. And that's the first and foremost thing I will fight for in Washington. Because if we don't, our children will be at risk because this republic may not survive. We cannot continue to survive with the massive burdens we have. And lastly, I want to point out an error that was made a little earlier. I was a Marine for 28 years. This is your right. My opponent over there on the worthy left said he was on the far right. The military right's over here.
I'm on the people's right, Charlie. I'm on the people's right.
You can always tell when you get a group of politicians together, there are two rights.
Anyway, that's what I would do. I would stop in the bureaucracies, send control back to the states like they originally our founding fathers wanted us to have, something I really believe the Tea Party believes in.
Thank you. Mr. Carlos. So, with the U.S. over $15 trillion in debt, what is your opinion of farm subsidies? Should anything be done about them?
Well, subsidies generally are not necessarily consistent with the free market principles, but you can't be a purist. We are definitely in debt. Every year our budget's getting more and more out of control, and that needs to be addressed. And I think farm subsidies perhaps is not the first place we need to start. Entitlement reform, the welfare state, the cradle to grave, assurances that Americans, well, they're not really assurances, they're supposed assurances. Those are the first things we need to address to get the deficit and the budget under control. I mean, a government simply can't spend more than it takes in indefinitely. Certainly maybe there's a year or two, there's an emergency or a crisis in which the federal government spends more than it takes in, but it's a way of life in Washington and it's a way of life in Sacramento. And I mean, most of us know that it's unsustainable. So something's got to give, and I don't know that farm subsidies is the place to start, but certainly everything needs to be on the table.
Mr. Ray, the government still owns a significant part of GM, roughly to the tune of $25 billion. GM's CEO, Daniel Ackerson, said that the U.S. has a form of, quote-unquote, hybrid capitalism, where the government should assist ailing companies. Do you feel that we should have bailed out GM and the other auto manufacturers? And do you really think that we should have this form of hybrid capitalism in the United States?
No. To get this economy going, there are three basic areas that we can work on, and it's not subsidizing things that aren't making it. One of the reasons they're not making it is because their union contracts are too high. And so they come back to the American taxpayer to pay the bill that they can't pay because they agreed with unions to pay them fees that won't work. What we need to do right now is to get our energy industry fired up, oil, coal, natural gas, nuclear, and the renewables, which are not ready for prime time yet. That'll employ over 1 million people within 12 to 24 months. Get the housing industry back on track. That's another 1 million to 2 million people within 24 months. And small business, which is an absolute job-making machine. Businesses over 500 people, large businesses, over the last 15 years have generated 1.8 million jobs. Very nicely done. Small businesses with less than 500 people, over the last 15 years have generated 21.9 million jobs. They are job-making machines, almost 1.5 million a year. They're being regulated and taxed to death. Get off their back, let them go to work. When John F. Kennedy said, a rising tide floats all boats. When a lot of money is coming into the government and there are opportunities, you can take those people that are on welfare and entitlements that won't get off because they've got that mentality, some of them second, third generation. But when there are opportunities out there that you can show them they can make even more money than what they're doing now, you can get them to move over, start to cut down those entitlements, then start to tear into the national debt and get things under control.
Thank you. Mr. Kaur, what is your opinion of this hybrid capitalism that Mr. Ackerson from GM says the United States has? And do you believe that we should bail out companies such as the auto companies when they are having tons of trouble?
No, I don't. I don't think that we should ever bail out any private company. Honestly, you think about it this way. If a private company is doing something that's going to cause them to go out of business, they should go out of business. If they're that bad at it, they should stop. The government shouldn't be a safety net that allows companies and businesses to behave badly and to think that they're just going to be, oh, I'm going to be fine, the government's going to bail me out. We should never have done it, not once, not ever. We opened up a floodgate, and now we're telling companies, hey, if you have enough employees, and you do something that's going to make you go bankrupt, that's going to put all those people out of work, well, us up here in D.C., we don't want that many people on the unemployment rolls, so we're going to give you money to stay open. It's a bad way of doing business. If a company is going to go out of business, it's between themselves and their shareholders and their employees. And if they have to retool and restructure in order to stay in business, that's what they need to do. They can't be coming with hat in hand to the government saying, please help me because I couldn't do it on my own. By the way, while you're helping me out, I'm going to pay, $150 billion in bonuses using your money.
Right on.
Mr. Tubbs, this is a little change of pace here, but what do you think the federal government should do to limit illegal immigration?
Good question. Illegal immigration is different than illegal immigration. Two different things. Most, if not all of us, are sons and daughters of immigrants. Illegal immigration can be done. Again, I'm going to use the leadership theme, if we're willing to solve the problem, which I am. You do it, start with three principles, or three ways to get it done. First, secure the border. Really secure the southern border with fences that'll stop people from coming over. Use 21st century technology with a response team to stop the illegal crossings. Second, the Bracero program was started in World War II. It worked fantastically. Guest worker program. I have family in farming. I've worked with landscaping during college. I've worked with illegal immigrants. Not on my family farm, by the way, just for... But they're necessary in this economy. But it's the economy that's key. So you allow for a guest worker program, but you take away any taxpayer-subsidized incentives. You don't allow them to have welfare, disability, Social Security, unemployment, all these things that American citizens have to sustain them, the safety net. You don't give it to the guest worker. So if they can't take care of themselves here, they go home and let their country do it. And then the third part of that immigration solution is to close the anchor baby loop. You can do it with the law, and if the U.S. Supreme Court shoots it down, then I'll support a constitutional amendment to fix the 14th Amendment that allows for the anchor baby loophole. Thank you.
Mr. Ray, do you see the Constitution as more of a living and breathing document that should change over time, or do you believe that is a document that should be adhered to more strictly as it was originally written?
More strictly. Their basic understanding from their background was sufficient enough that it created a nation that became the greatest nation in the history of the planet. Rome conquered and ruled its entire known world for 500 to 1,000 years. Their big accomplishments were they had a one-lane cobblestone road throughout the empire, and they had aqueducts that transferred water. Does anybody want to compare the Roman Empire to the United States of 250 or 260 years of what we've developed? Apparently what they did a pretty good job. Over 50 of the 55 signers were Christian-believing, God-believing men. It's American Christianity, family, and a democratic republic, which if you analyze history is not the norm, it's the exception, where the average human being has a say in the government. That's the key to what created the government, the country that we live in now.
Thank you. Ms. Van, what is your stance on the Second Amendment, and what is your opinion on gun control?
I am a purist when it comes to gun control. I believe that we should have the right and the freedom to bear arms at any time, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. When you've been on the receiving end of a threat, you know the value to be able to protect yourself. We know the value to be able to protect our country, and our right to bear arms is the second right that we have to protect not only ourselves and our families, but our freedom. And I would absolutely fight to keep that in place and actually make it better than it is today.
Mr. Carlos, do you feel that the health care law, often referred to as Obamacare, is constitutional? And if not, what specifically do you think Congress needs to do to stop it?
Well, the lawyers may not be good for much, but they can help with interpreting the Constitution. Some on the bench do a little more than they should, but I did study this in school, and the people that wrote Obama's law did not, apparently. It's patently unconstitutional. There is no doubt about it. There's only 3 ways that the federal government can regulate under the Commerce Clause, and one is to regulate the instrumentalities, like machines and people. It can regulate the channels of commerce. And the third way, which they use all the time, is to regulate economic activity that in the aggregate has a substantial effect on the economy. Now that came from a Supreme Court case. I mean, what is that? What does that even mean? It's hard to say, but if nothing else, the federal government can regulate economic activity. The 6 of us standing on this stage right now, according to Obama's people, are participating in the healthcare market right now by choosing not to buy insurance. So we are making a choice right here as we stand to actively not buy insurance, and that choice is an economic one in which they can regulate. Clearly that's ridiculous. We're having a debate. What we're doing now has nothing to do with commerce. The federal government can't regulate us as we stand here or as we walk through the meadow and whistle. So they can't regulate us as we live our lives, and this will soon get to the Supreme Court, and if, Lord willing, all 9 justices are still living, it will be overturned.
Mr. Shout?
Finally! I waited, it was a long dry spell.
So, in your opinion, what specifically do you think the federal government should do to limit illegal immigration?
Oh, specifically, we're farmers. We hire a lot of legal immigrants. Right now, we can't even fire them if we find out they're illegal. We have to give them like 90 days to go get their documents in order. That's wrong. We need to take away, as a nation, the reason they're coming here, and that is the ability to work. I can't blame anybody for wanting to come here to have a better life. But when we don't let our employers terminate people that they know are here illegally, we are taking away their right to run their business, and we're also not taking away the reason that people are coming here in the first place. I believe in legal immigration. I'm married to a Korean gal. It took 1.5 years to get her here, and I was an officer in the military because they checked everything out thoroughly. But we have people walking across the border. They need to go back. Just recently on Shout Farms, my brother realized one of the employees' documents was not in order. He said, I got to let you go, but we couldn't let him go. So Bob very tactfully and smartly, at the end of the season, laid him off. And of course, we won't rehire unless he has documents that are in line. But we're punishing our employers if we fire somebody they know he's illegally. And we have cities that are making sanctuary for people that are here illegally. Folks, they've turned our laws upside down. That's not what America's about. We need to have legal immigration and stop the illegal immigration by taking the reason they're coming here in the first place away. No jobs, they won't come.
Mr. Ray, what can be done to get job creation levels back up to what they need to be in order to get this economy to truly recover?
I think I just explained that. I'll go one more time. The energy industry in I think it's North Dakota. They have a 3% unemployment rate. People are sleeping in their cars right now, up there working because they can't build hotels and find rooms to live fast enough. If we opened up the oil industry, I've sat down with environmentalists. You give me 5 minutes with a Democrat, an independent environmentalist. I don't care who they are. Give me 5 minutes, I'll get them on the same page. We buy oil from other countries and pay them billions of dollars to people that don't even like us. Are they smarter than we are? They can drill better than we are. Their engineers and contractors are better than we are. How come then we can't drill? Why can't we get a permit to drill oil? Nuclear. France and Japan get 80% of their power from nuclear. What do we learn from Japan? Don't build a nuclear power plant in a tsunami zone or an earthquake fault. Okay? In defense of Japan, though, they don't have a whole lot of dirt. Okay? China has 14 nuclear power plants, with 25 more under construction, and a number of them in different planning stages. We can't get a permit to build one. We can't get a permit to build a coal-fired power plant. Our energy prices are going up, which means our industry is less competitive with worldwide industry. It doesn't make any sense. And again, the housing industry, I can show how to turn that back around. They made a mess of that. The more they do, the worse they make it. We can turn that back around. And then small businesses, I explained before. Each one of those, within 12 to 24 months, would generate 1 million jobs or more. That's 3 million jobs. We would fire up the economy. And with all that money coming in, there's a whole lot of things we can do to get things right again.
Mr. Schauer, how important do you view the 10th Amendment that outlines states' rights? And do you feel that it has been infringed upon by the federal government?
Oh, it's one of the most important parts of the Bill of Rights, the 10th Amendment, that all things not here prescribed in this Constitution revert to the people and to the states. And that's why I'm running for office. I really believe, we say in the Marine Corps, let the corporal do the corporaling. The general doesn't go down and run the platoon. The Washington, D.C. should not be running our states or our homes or our communities. We need to return our government to a government of the people, a Jeffersonian democracy, where we can have a government that handles problems locally. California's problems are much different than Wyoming's. Wyoming's problems are much different than Alabama. Right on down the line, the people in each state know what's best for their state. It's also the most efficient form of government. It's also the most democratic form of government, because your local electors are much more accessible than those people that are answering to the lobbyists in Washington, D.C. So it's absolutely crucially important, along with the First Amendment and the Second Amendment and all of them. And I didn't get to talk about the Second Amendment, but the right to keep and bear arms should not be infringed, and you're all a member of a free militia. Don't ever let them take that right away from you.
Ms. Van, the Commerce Clause of the Constitution is what currently is being used to defend Obamacare in the courts. And more recently, the FDA claims that your own stem cells are drugs and therefore need regulation under the Commerce Clause. Do you think these are fair use of that clause?
It's absolutely not a fair use of the clause. It's an absolute abuse of that clause. Just as what we've seen the last couple days with Obamacare and the Obama administration pushing down on Catholic Healthcare West to force them to do something that is outside of what they want to do. We have freedom of religion in this country, and we should not be forced under Obamacare to do either of those. It's absolutely unacceptable. We need to stand up and be extremely loud about it. I mean, folks, doesn't this scare you? I mean, really think about what's happened in this last year. It absolutely terrifies me. And I have this 9-year-old son who's looking to me and his dad for his future, and I'm unwilling to sit by and watch this happen. We can see our freedoms being ripped away from us on a daily basis. We have to get louder. We have to stand up and say enough is enough. This Catholic Healthcare West situation with forcing this on the hospitals was an absolute last straw for me.
Mr. Core. Sorry about that. Just laying back on track. As a congressman, if you were a congressman, do you feel that the state should be able to take some kind of action, as Arizona tried to do, if the federal government does not uphold its duty to protect our borders and try and limit illegal immigration?
Honestly, I'd rather see the border states take a more forward role anyway. Because when you do have illegal immigration, the illegal immigrants that are coming across, whether it be the northern border or the southern border, are a drain on that state's resources as well as the national resources, but more so of the state. So honestly, I think that the state should actually be at the forefront of that issue and have the backing of the federal government, and not have the federal government sit there and go, no, this is the rule that, by the way, we're not going to follow, and if you try and enforce the rule that we don't want followed, then we're going to try and sue you, which is actually what was going on with Arizona and I believe Georgia or Alabama, one of the two, Alabama. And when we have the federal government not only just saying, we're not going to enforce the rule that we've enforced, now you have everybody not knowing what page they're supposed to be on. You've got everyone from your local law enforcement, your local sheriff's department, all the way up to ICE and the FBI, DEA, and everyone else trying to figure out what's supposed to happen. If you had all those agencies, say in California, on the southern border saying, these are our rules and these are our policies, that would take a lot of the guessing out of the game. So honestly, I don't think the federal government should have the front seat on that issue.
Mr. Carlos, in your opinion, do you think it would be a good idea to have Congress pass legislation that would require all future legislation to pinpoint in the Constitution where they actually have the authority to pass that law?
It's definitely, I mean, it's a great idea to have any congressman or any person recommending legislation point out the grant of authority in the Constitution, because there's not that many. The federal government is a government of enumerated powers. We hear that all the time. But what that means is the federal government cannot act unless it's given the power within the Constitution to act. And they can tax, they can spend, they can regulate through the Commerce Clause, but they can't do that much. There's something known in law as the police power. It's the power to pass a law for the general welfare of the people. Basically any law you want. Only the states have that power. The federal government doesn't have that power. So, yeah, I think it's a great idea that any bill introduced cite and within the Constitution where they get the grant of power, but Congress can't bind future Congresses, so they couldn't say in the future you must do this, but I think any bill introduced, at a minimum, should tell us what the grant of power is, but I can guarantee you 90% of the time it's going to be the Commerce Clause, because they think they can regulate anything through the Commerce Clause.
Mr. Tubbs, what do you think Congress can do specifically to get job creation back up to the proper levels to help the economy get back on track?
You bet. That's part of the balancing budget aspect of my campaign, is you have to grow revenue. Growing revenue by growing jobs, not growing taxes. Don't let anybody tell you that's the way to grow revenue. It's been tested through time that increasing taxes decreases the economy, decreases revenue. Growing jobs. We have an Obamacare. There's so many good questions I want to answer here tonight. I'm going to hit a few of them. Obamacare is going to cost us 800,000 jobs just in the next few years, according to the CBO. 190,000 jobs have been lost because of the regulations put on drilling in the Gulf as a knee-jerk reaction to the terrible catastrophe we had there. Okay, 190,000 jobs there. Dodd-Frank, that bank bill, did not free up credit. Because it was a 2,000-page bill of regulations, banks and loaning agencies said, whoa, we don't know what's going on. Credit tightened up again. The federal government is putting out over 240 regulations every year that cost the economy $100 million apiece. It was 140 before Obama, which was too much, but it's 240 right now. What's killing our jobs is that Washington is out of control. Ronald Reagan had a similar debacle that he faced. He cut taxes, yeah, but he cut regulations. We have failed to cut those regulations, leaving the business environment unknown and too unpredictable for people to grow their businesses and grow jobs. That's where we have to start.
Thank you. Mr. Tubbs, staying with you. Judges in today's world often legislate from the bench, a form of judicial activism that uses their rulings as a law. And oftentimes that actually invalidates laws that were passed by Congress. Do you see this kind of judicial activism as a serious problem?
Yeah, you all know that just a couple days ago, Prop 8 was overturned by two people. Two people countermanded the wishes and the votes of millions in California. Two judges. That's how important that job is. And this is where elections have consequences. The judicial branch is very important, and they must do their job right. And that's where your efforts come in. Because we elected a president in 2008, because a lot of us didn't get involved and help the people that needed to get elected. And guess what? We figured it out, and the Tea Party movement started. Yay. So now that's where consequences our elections have consequences, because the people in charge are appointing those judges. And we have to do something about it. We have to elect the people that are not going to allow that to happen. To use the balance of my time on the Second Amendment, it's another government control issue. If you give up your Second Amendment right to bear arms, who's in control of your safety, of your security? Is it you or the government? Anytime you look at regulation coming out of Washington, giving up rights, who is gaining control? You or the government? Second Amendment is about who's in charge. America, the Constitution put you in charge, not government.
Mr. Carlos, do you think congressmen should be able to pass laws that exempt themselves from the legislation, such as involuntary, or the more recently passed rule that they had to ensure they could not do insider trading? Should anything be done to change that?
Well, yeah, that's a pretty easy one. They should be voted out of office. I can't imagine that's good in any district. But the congressmen should abide by the same laws and be governed by the same laws as all of us. They're not that special. There's 435 of them. They get paid too much. But the only thing that I've heard of lately, and I'm a news junkie, political news junkie, is that one you're talking about where they were exempted from insider trading. That sounds like a relic from the good old days where everything was passed in the back room, the cigars and, a nice drink. So I think they're probably embarrassed that was still in the books, because nowadays with the internet and 24-hour news cycle, I doubt there'll be that much of going on. But I think it'll police itself, but it's pretty ridiculous.
Mr. Schauer, if you were elected to Congress, what would your 3 top priorities be as a congressman?
Well, first off, I wouldn't be a congressman. I'd be a representative. I like to say there's a difference between somebody who wants to be a congressman and somebody who wants to be a representative. The House of Representatives represents you, the people. My first priority is to reduce the size of the bureaucracy, return control back to the states and back to the people. That's number 1. Get the fiscal spending under control and do it immediately, because your children and your grandchildren are at risk. I've been in the nation of Turkey where I had to spend 3 million Turkish lira for dinner. It was about $1.50 because they had massive inflation. I've seen people on a ranch in the 60s take their money back to Mexico at 13 pesos a dollar, and by 1970s inflation hit, and their money was worthless because it was 3,000 pesos a dollar. If we keep spending money the way we're spending it, we are going to the poorhouse. This nation will not long survive. Our republic is at risk. So that's number 1. Get the fiscal control under control, return this control back to the states, and start to stop the political bickering. I'm more in line with the Tea Party back in Washington than I would be with the Republican whip, because my loyalty is to you. It's not to the GOP. And I'm a bit of a firebrand Republican Party these days. I'm the guy that ran against Jim Nielsen last time in the Assembly District and got 44% of the vote against an incumbent who said he lived in a trailer in Gerber. That's me. I will stand up and I will raise holy heck when I have to. How much time I got? I got 5 seconds. I'll give more next time.
Mr. Ray, going back to judges legislating from the bench, what is your opinion of this judicial activism? How serious of a threat do you think it is?
Sorry, one more time.
Regarding judicial activism legislating from the bench when it comes to judges, how serious of a threat do you see that to our republic?
Well, it's just like I said. I mean, just the last few days, we saw how important it is. For the second time, the 9th District Court of Appeals said that the California voters are not intelligent enough to make their own decisions. And they can't make a fair and honest decision. I mean, that's about when a handful of people can negate millions of people's votes, that's about as serious as it gets. Especially when one of them votes. I have friends that are gay. But when one of them votes that gay marriage should be legal, retires from the bench, and then comes out of the closet, to me that's not a full disclosure issue. I've got a problem with that. No, and I mean, this whole thing about, as far as on judicial, don't legislate from the bench. If you can't find constitutional reference to make a decision from, then send it back to Congress and tell them there's nothing to make it from. You need to make a new law so that we have something to make it from. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have what we have now, which is judges taking the opportunity to give you their opinion and to legislate from the bench. They're just going to keep doing it, unless we stop it.
Thank you. Ms. Van, I got a lot of input from everyone sending me emails asking questions, and I think the number 1 question I had from everyone, almost everybody included this question they wanted me to ask, was that Agenda 21 is a very big issue here to us locally. Yuba County, with their general plan, they've been talking about it a lot recently, and everyone wanted to know, as a congresswoman, what involvement would you have in trying to stop this implementation of Agenda 21?
Well, let me just say, I'm glad you asked me this question. Being a land use guru and all, this is one of my favorite questions. Private property rights are one of our fundamental rights. If you start at the top with things like Agenda 21, or you can start down at the bottom at our local level with COGS and regional government and activities that take things away from our rights. I am a part of the local government system. I am a county supervisor, and I'm very, very proud of the fact that we've been able to maintain our independence from some of these programs that cause regional government to take more control over yours and I's rights. Agenda 21 is just the first step through an environmental agenda to start taking away our rights in America. We cannot cede our rights and responsibilities to other countries, especially when those countries choose not to follow the same rules that they'd like to apply to us. So tell me how that works. It's something that we have to stay on top of, acknowledge exists, and fight at every level, whether it's the city council, county board, state, or the feds. And I think a great place to start is with local control and local government, going back to the 10th Amendment. That is an absolute must for us. We have got to keep control of things local. Plus, when you see me in the grocery store, you get to yell at me. But that's why I will live at home and commute. So when you see me in the grocery store, you can still yell at me.
Mr. Core, if elected to Congress, what would be your 3 main priorities?
Well, the first one, since a lot of people on what will end up being the other side of the aisle like to say, well, remember the fiscal prosperity of the 1990s. I would like to cut their pay back to the 1990s level and cut $24,000 a year out of their paycheck. And if they can't figure out how to make it work on $150,000 a year,